Imagine lying in bed, safe beneath your blankets, when suddenly you realize you're not alone. The shadows in the corner stretch too far. The ticking clock moves backward. And then you see eyes staring at you through the glass, a face pressed against your window, clawing to get inside. What if your dreams weren't just nightmares? What if they were warnings? Visions that bled into reality, telling you that something or someone is already here. Tonight, we're diving into 3 true stories where dreams collided with the real world, where the line between sleep and waking became a doorway to terror. These are not stories you can brush off as just a dream. These are chilling accounts where fear followed people out of their subconscious and into their homes. And if it could happen to them, it could happen to you. Welcome to The Price Paid, where the horrors you fear most may already be waiting in the dark. Hit subscribe, because what you'll hear tonight might be the only warning you get before the nightmare comes for you. The first time it happened, I was just a kid, no older than 8 or 9. For years afterward, I carried the memory with me like a hidden scar, because it wasn't just a dream, it was a nightmare that repeated itself over and over, each time with more detail than the last. At first, I thought it was the usual kind of childhood terror,
They're still out there.
the kind you laugh about when you're grown up. But this one stayed. This one clung to me like it had a purpose. It would begin with me lying in bed, but not through my own eyes. Instead, I was hovering above, looking down at myself like a camera in the corner of the ceiling. That strange out-of-body view alone was enough to send my heart racing. I tried to move, to swim back down into myself, but my body stayed still on the mattress while my floating view swiveled slowly around the room. The longer I looked, the more wrong things appeared. My digital clock was counting backward, second by second, as though time itself was unraveling. My walls were covered with crayon drawings rows of people holding hands, all of them smiling. In every picture, there was one smaller figure, a child that looked like me, standing in front of a blue-roofed house I had never seen before. I wasn't the kind of kid who drew pictures like that. In fact, I never remembered making them. And yet, there they were. On the floor was another impossibility. My old toy train, the one I had lost years earlier, always sitting in a different spot each dream. Each of these small details chipped away at me, convincing me that something far darker than imagination was at work. The worst part, though, was always the same. After scanning my room, my eyes would drag toward the window as if pulled by some force, and that's when he appeared. A man, only inches away on the other side of the glass. His face was pale, his hair short and gray, and on his temple was a cut or scar that looked raw even in the dream. He never spoke. He only stared for a few seconds before clawing at the window, scraping and pulling as though he could rip it open with his bare hands. That was usually when I woke up drenched in sweat. Sometimes I ran to check the window, searching for scratches or smudges. Sometimes I froze and couldn't move until daylight, but every time, the fear was the same. I tried to bury it, but after the 4th dream, I couldn't take it anymore. I told my parents. My mom brushed it off as normal, saying kids often have recurring dreams. My dad tried to calm me by walking me outside around the house, showing me there were no footprints, no broken locks, nothing to fear. But no matter what they said, the fear didn't vanish. The dreams didn't happen every night, maybe once every 3 months, but the repetition made them feel like warnings carved into my brain. Then, after a year of terror, they stopped. For 6 months, I slept without a single episode. I almost believed I had escaped, but one night, the dream came back. Everything was the same, the backwards clock, the strange drawings, the train, but this time, something was different. The window was open. Cold air seeped through the dream, and when I woke up, I couldn't move. I was trapped in full sleep paralysis, convinced that the man was already inside. My chest tightened, and for 5 unbearable minutes, I lay frozen, convinced that any second he would step across the room and place his hands on me. When I finally regained control, I stumbled to the window, heart pounding, only to find it locked. Still, the cold air lingered as though the nightmare had seeped into reality. Months passed, the dreams returning now and then, but I grew older and tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks. Until one night, I described the man to my parents in greater detail, mentioning the scar on his forehead. That was when they froze. My dad cut me off, asking if I was sure. My mom's face tightened. They didn't want to tell me, but a few days later, they finally admitted the truth. When I was very young, there had been a man named Brian, a college friend of my father's, who often babysat me. I had no memory of him, but apparently I adored him. He'd read to me at night, and I'd cry when he left. My parents called him Uncle Brian, even though he wasn't family. But something happened, something bad.
So let me get this
My
straight.
father never
You're saying a
explained,
ghost did this.
only saying
What
they
he
had a
said,
falling
not me.
out so severe that Brian was forbidden from ever coming near our family again. And Brian, they revealed, had a scar on his forehead from a car accident long before I was born. I didn't know what to say. The face from my dreams wasn't some random invention. It was someone real, someone who had once been close to me, someone my subconscious apparently remembered even though I did not. My dad admitted that he believed the dreams were my brain's way of processing some memory buried deep inside. But if that was true, how could I explain what happened in the 4th year? One night, I woke from the dream and out of habit looked toward my window. Something moved outside. Just a flicker of shadow, but enough to make my blood run cold. I screamed. My dad sprinted outside, and my mom held me as tightly as she could. When my dad returned, he whispered to her, and then they called the police. I never heard sirens that night, but the next morning, my father admitted he'd seen faint footprints in the dirt beneath my window. He insisted it couldn't have been. Brianni didn't know where we lived anymore. But the fear that maybe, just maybe, it had been him never left me. The strangest part is what happened after. I never had the dream again. Even now, I still wonder what was real and what was just nightmare. Was someone actually standing outside my window all those years? Were my dreams a warning? Or was my mind pulling shadows from childhood into visions I couldn't escape? I'll never know for sure. But what chills me most isn't the possibility of a stranger. It's the thought that someone I once trusted, someone who once read me to sleep, may have been waiting outside all along. I have always been an active dreamer. Even as a kid, nightmares used to visit me like unwelcome guests, each one leaving behind a trace of unease when I woke. Over time, I developed my own coping mechanism falling asleep with background noise. It could be anything. The low rumble of a thunderstorm, a podcast about space, even a chess tutorial. The sounds grounded me, and more often than not, they shaped my dreams into something manageable, predictable. If I fell asleep to a soccer video, I'd end up scoring goals in my sleep. If it was ocean waves, I'd dream of beaches. It was my way of taking back control. That's why the night at Duncan's house caught me so off guard. It was supposed to be a simple sleepover. Just me, Duncan, and Ian sprawled across the big couches in his living room, eating junk food and staying up too late. Duncan's parents were out of town for the weekend, a rare chance for us to have the house to ourselves. I didn't have my usual soundscape to lull me to sleep, but I didn't think that would matter. Without the noise, though, my dreams became unpredictable. And this time, unpredictability meant danger. I remember it vividly. I was standing on a small sailboat I had never seen before, drifting over dark water that churned like liquid metal. The sky above was an unnatural mix of gray and deep purple, heavy clouds rolling like smoke. The wind howled around me, and the boat pitched violently with each swell. It felt like I was trapped inside a movie I hadn't agreed to star in. Then came the jolt. Something hit the hull hard enough to make the whole vessel shudder. Cracks splintered beneath my feet, and water started gushing through. Desperate, I tried to plug the hole with my jacket, my hands slipping as the icy waters surged higher. Panic wrapped around my chest like a vice. And then, out of nowhere, a dolphin broke the surface, its black eyes locking onto mine. In a clear human voice, it said one word: "Wake up." The shock of that voice yanked me out of sleep instantly. But the strange part was how clear-headed I felt.
Is he in there?
Normally, waking from a nightmare leaves me
I hope
foggy, clinging to scraps of the dream. This time, my senses were sharp,
We are doing
my
everything
skin
we can.
prickling as though the cold ocean water had followed me back into reality. I scanned the living room. Ian was curled up on one couch, Duncan on another. Everything looked normal, but something was off. It took me a few seconds to place Ida's steady rushing sound, like a hose left running coming from somewhere upstairs. At first, I thought maybe a faucet had been left on, but the sound was too strong, too deliberate. My heart started thudding. That dream about the sinking boat had been my mind trying to tell me something. I crept up the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The noise grew louder, unmistakably running water. It was coming from the bathroom at the end of the hall. The door was cracked open just enough to see the sink. Its knob turned all the way to the right. Water gushed full blast, spilling onto the counter. That shouldn't have been possible. Faucets don't just turn themselves on. I hesitated at the doorway, my breath shallow. The upstairs bathroom was too big. It had a long counter, a bathtub with a curtain, and an awkward corner where the toilet sat hidden. Plenty of blind spots where someone could be waiting. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to back away. I couldn't see anyone, but I felt the electric prickle of being watched. I slowly stepped back, then bolted down the stairs. I shook Duncan awake, my hands gripping his shoulders harder than I meant to. At first, he was groggy, blinking at me in confusion, but the urgency in my voice snapped him into focus. I told him what I'd heard, what I'd seen. His eyes widened, and without another word, we crept up the stairs together, leaving Ian asleep below. Duncan didn't hesitate at the bathroom door. He pushed it open and stepped inside. It happened in an instant. A figure exploded from the blind spot, slamming into Duncan with the force of a linebacker. Duncan crashed to the floor, the stranger looming over him with a length of PVC pipe raised high like a weapon. I didn't think. I just acted. I lunged at the man, my shoulders slamming into his side. The three of us went down in a heap, limbs flailing. The stranger was bigger, stronger. He swung the pipe wildly, barely missing Duncan's head as we struggled. It was chaos shouting, grunting, the sound of the faucet still running like a backdrop to the madness. Somehow we managed to pull him down for a moment, our combined weight pinning him to the tile. But he twisted like an animal and broke free, shoving us aside. He sprinted down the stairs before we could grab him. By the time we reached the porch, he was gone, swallowed by the night. The police arrived about 30 minutes later. We told them everything, every detail we could remember. They found a downstairs window unlocked, its latch pried loose, no cameras, no fingerprints, no evidence to hold on to. The officers called it a random break-in, a burglar spooked by finding people inside. But neither Duncan nor I believed that. Why turn on a sink faucet at full blast, making noise, drawing attention? Why hide in the bathroom instead of escaping quietly? This wasn't a simple robbery gone wrong. It was a trap. Over the next few days, Duncan became convinced that whoever broke in knew his parents were gone and expected him to be alone. Maybe they'd been watching the house. Maybe they had been waiting for the right moment. I didn't argue. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Whoever that man was, he hadn't come to steal a TV. He had come for something far darker. I still can't shake the thought of what would have happened if I'd gone into that bathroom alone.
Please hurry.
If I'd stepped past that doorway, crouched down to turn off the faucet, would he have tackled me instead? Would anyone have known? The dream about the sinking boat, the dolphin telling me to wake up, was that just my subconscious stitching together random signals? Or was it a warning from somewhere deeper, some primal instinct trying to save my life? Even now, when I hear running water at night, my heart jumps. I picture that bathroom, the cracked door, the hidden corners. I picture Duncan going down under the weight of a stranger. I picture myself, a second too late, lying unconscious on the tile. That night changed the way I think about dreams. I no longer dismiss them as harmless stories my brain tells itself. Sometimes I've learned a dream isn't just a dream. Sometimes it's the only reason you're still alive. It was a Friday night, the kind of night that should have been carefree. My girlfriend Bonnie's parents had gone away for their anniversary, leaving the house empty except for us. Normally, they never would have allowed me to stay over, let alone sleep in her room. But with them gone for the whole weekend, Bonnie convinced herself it would be fine. Her neighborhood was the quiet, suburban type, rows of houses that all looked the same, the kind of place where nothing ever seemed to happen. At least that was the illusion. Her room overlooked the backyard, a stretch of grass that disappeared into a dense line of trees. At night, those trees became a solid wall of blackness, a void you could get lost staring into. We settled into her queen-size bed after watching a movie, the glow of the TV fading until the house fell silent. By midnight, we were asleep. That's when the dream began. I jolted awake, or at least I thought I had. The dream was a false awakening, but I didn't know it at the time. I heard a door slam shut downstairs, so loud it rattled through the floorboards. My pulse spiked. Then came the footsteps, rapid and heavy, racing up the stairs. I sat up in bed, every instinct telling me to protect Bonnie, but something held me frozen. The room looked exactly as it had when we'd gone to sleep. The only difference was the light. A thin yellow glow spilled into the room from beneath the bedroom door. Just a sliver, but my eyes locked onto it like it was the only thing in the world. My vision tunneled until that strip of light consumed me. The footsteps stopped outside, and then the voices started. At first, just one voice, a woman's hurling insults about my looks, my choices, my future. Then it grew darker, more personal. The voice knew things about me, private things I had never told anyone, not even Bonnie. Memories from my past, mistakes I had buried, regrets I never spoke aloud. More voices joined in until there were dozens, then hundreds, overlapping, dragging out the worst parts of me and throwing them in my face. It was unbearable. I couldn't take another second. In desperation, I leapt from the bed, threw open the door, and the house plunged into blackness. Every light snapped off. The voices stopped. The air turned ice cold, stinging my skin. It felt like I had stepped out of my world and into something else entirely. Terrified, I scrambled back to the bed, pulling the blanket over me like I was a child again. Then I woke up, or so I thought. The cruelest part of false awakenings is how convincing they are. I sat up, trembling, trying to convince myself it had only been a dream. But when I looked at the door, the same thin glow was spilling beneath it. My blood froze. Then, just like before, I heard the downstairs door slam, the pounding footsteps racing toward us. The whole nightmare replayed with agonizing precision, down to the voices clawing at my sanity. Again, I ran to the door. Again, the instant it opened, the house plunged into freezing darkness. And then, at last, I woke up for real. For several moments, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart racing. Bonnie was asleep beside me, her calm breathing a lifeline pulling me back to reality. That was the first sign I was truly awake, hadn't been there in my dream. Relief started to wash over me, until I sat up and saw the door. A strip of yellow light glowed beneath it, identical to the one in my nightmare. It didn't make sense. Every light in the house had been switched off before bed, and then I heard it. Footsteps downstairs, real footsteps this time. The air went out of my lungs. I grabbed my phone, dialing the police as quietly as possible, whispering into the receiver while Bonnie slept. I told them someone was in the house. I crept to the door just to check the lock, my hands shaking, then hurried back to Bonnie. I woke her carefully, covering her mouth so she wouldn't scream. Her eyes widened as I explained, but she stayed silent, her fear as sharp as mine. The minutes dragged on until finally, the sound of boots thundered downstairs. Police voices filled the air. The front door burst open, shouts echoing through the house. By the time I dared step out, I saw 2 masked men being marched into the night in handcuffs. Bonnie's parents returned early after hearing what happened. Strangely, they weren't angry that I had stayed over. They were grateful I had been there. The men had confessed, admitting they targeted the house after seeing a social media post about the family trip. They thought the house would be empty, but that explanation didn't calm me. I couldn't stop thinking about the dream. I could accept that maybe the noises of the break-in had bled into my subconscious. But what about the content? The voices that knew my secrets? The exact strip of light under the door, an image I should not have been able to conjure since I couldn't even see it from where I lay. How could I have dreamed something I wasn't physically able to perceive? Even weeks later, that glow haunted me. I would be sitting in class or walking down the street, and I'd see it in my mind's eye, sharp and vivid, a permanent imprint. Bonnie told me I was just rattled, that it would fade eventually. Maybe she was right, but part of me feared it wasn't going anywhere. That strip of light was more than an image. It was a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the line between dreaming and waking isn't just thin, it's non-existent. What unsettles me most is not that the break-in happened, not even that the dream seemed to warn me. It's that the voices knew things they shouldn't. They reached into corners of my mind I thought were sealed off, dragging them out into the open. Were they just manifestations of my subconscious guilt? Or something else entirely, something that exists in the space between sleep and reality? I may never know, but every time I close my eyes, I wonder if the glow under the door will be waiting for me again, ready to drag me back into that nightmare that feels less like a dream and more like a place I might never escape. Dreams are supposed to be safe. They're supposed to be private, the one place where the worst things you imagine can't actually touch you. But the stories you've just heard, my story, Duncan's story, Bonnie's story, make that illusion crumble. Each one started as a nightmare. Each one spilled into reality like ink soaking through paper. And in the end, none of us were sure where the dream stopped and the waking world began. I've spent years trying to figure it out. At first, I thought maybe there was a rational explanation. The human brain is a strange machine. It can pick up sounds while you sleep and weave them into dreams, like stitching together scraps of fabric. A dripping faucet becomes a storm. A creaking floorboard becomes footsteps. Maybe that's all it was. But the deeper I looked, the less sense it made. How did I know about Brian's scar? How did I dream the exact strip of light under Bonnie's door when I couldn't physically see it from where I lay? How did a dolphin in a dream tell me to wake up just minutes before a stranger lunged from behind a bathroom door? Coincidence starts to look flimsy when it stacks up like that. I keep circling back to the same idea, that dreams aren't just noise, they're signals.
Are warnings.
Our subconscious mind is a surveillance camera we didn't know we had. It picks up patterns, whispers of danger, things we're not consciously aware of. Most of the time we ignore it. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, it breaks through. It shows us what's waiting for us on the other side of sleep. What makes that terrifying isn't just the possibility of being warned. It's the possibility of being watched. In every story, There's a sense of eyes on you. The man at the window, the figure hiding in the bathroom, the footsteps behind the bedroom door. And what's worse, that these people might actually be there, or that our minds conjure them out of some primal fear, shaping shadows into faces. Which reality is scarier, the one where the nightmare comes true, or the one where your brain invents it so vividly that it feels true? Even my father had theories about what was happening to me. He thought my dreams about Brian were my brain digging up memories from before I could talk. Maybe he was right, but that doesn't explain the footprints under my window, or the break-in at Duncan's house, or the masked men at Bonnie's. Those weren't memories. They were events, and they happened in the real world. I've read about something called predictive coding, a theory that your brain is always guessing what's about to happen next, constantly updating its predictions based on tiny signals you don't consciously notice. Maybe my dreams were my brain's way of screaming out those predictions, assembling them into a story I could understand. Maybe all three of us were just lucky enough or unlucky enough to have our minds tuned in at the right moment. But if that's true, then it means the warnings are always there, hidden under the noise of ordinary sleep. How many times have we brushed off a nightmare, not realizing it was our own subconscious sounding an alarm? How many times have we ignored it until it was too late? The part that haunts me most isn't the violence or the fear. It's the moments right before the moments when the dream still feels like a dream. When you're floating above your body or staring at a strip of light under a door or hearing water rush where it shouldn't. Those moments feel like a crossroads. You don't know yet if what you're experiencing is just a trick of the mind or a glimpse into something real. You're trapped between worlds, powerless to stop whatever's about to happen. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if that's what sleep really is, a doorway. Most of the time it stays shut, but every once in a while something opens it from the other side. Maybe it's a warning, maybe it's a memory, maybe it's something else entirely, something we're not supposed to see. If you've ever had a dream so vivid it felt like a premonition, you know what I mean? It's not just fear, it's recognition. It's your mind whispering, "You've been here before." I can't say for sure if dreams can predict danger. All I know is that I'm alive, and so are Duncan and Bonnie. If I had ignored the dolphin telling me to wake up, if I had dismissed the glow under the door as nothing, maybe the stories would have ended differently. Maybe they would have ended. That thought alone is enough to keep me up at night. So what do you do with that knowledge? Do you listen to your dreams? Do you treat every nightmare as a warning? You drive yourself mad trying to decode them all. But maybe, just maybe, the ones that won't let go, the ones that repeat, the ones that leave an image burned into your mind deserve your attention. Maybe that's your brain's way of saying, pay attention, someone's there, something's coming. And if you're lucky, you'll wake up in time. You'll hear the footsteps, you'll lock the door. You'll make the call. And the nightmare will pass, leaving you shaken but safe. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll wake up to the sound of a door slamming, or a faucet running, or a voice whispering your name from the dark. Maybe you'll find out the hard way that your dream wasn't just a dream at all. Welcome back to Waking Life. Welcome to the thin, dangerous edge where sleep meets reality. And if you're listening to this, ask yourself one thing before you close your eyes tonight. What will your dream show you, and will you believe it before it's too late? Dreams have always been dismissed as fragments of imagination, random signals firing in the brain, a harmless theater we wander through while we sleep. But the stories you have just heard make that theory feel far too simple. Each one proves that sometimes dreams bleed into reality in ways we cannot explain. A boy haunted by visions of a scarred man outside his window discovers his parents once knew someone who matched the description perfectly. A group of friends narrowly survive a violent home intruder because a dream urged one of them to wake up. A young couple avoids becoming victims of masked burglars, but only after a nightmare warns them of footsteps on the stairs. These were not ordinary dreams. These were warnings, messages that carried weight in the waking world. The unsettling truth is this: your mind is always listening, always sensing, always piecing together fragments of information you don't consciously notice. A creak in the hallway, a flicker of light, the faint shift of shadows outside your window. Your brain may ignore these signs during the day, but at night, when the barrier between conscious and unconscious fades, those signals break through. They come to you as images, voices, or entire worlds that feel real enough to leave you shaking when you open your eyes. Sometimes what we call nightmares are not fears at all, but alarms. So what can we take from this? First, do not dismiss the dreams that repeat. Recurring images, recurring voices, recurring warnings, those are the ones that demand attention. Second, understand that fear in a dream does not always mean weakness. Sometimes it is your brain's way of telling you that danger is closer than you realize. And finally, remember that we are most vulnerable when we are convinced we are safe. Sleep is supposed to be our refuge, but it is also the moment when the world around us moves unchecked. That is why we must remain vigilant, even in our most private hours. If you find yourself haunted by the same dream over and over, do not shrug it off. Ask yourself why. Look for the connections between what you see when your eyes are closed and what surrounds you when they are open. You may not like the answer you find, but ignoring it could cost more than a restless night. It could cost your life. The price of safety, the price of survival, is attention. And sometimes, the things we see in our sleep are the sharpest warnings we will ever get. So the next time you feel your heart racing in the dark, the next time you see a face in the window, hear footsteps outside your door, or watch the glow of light beneath it, don't just tell yourself it's a dream. Ask yourself what your dream is trying to tell you before it's too late. This has been another descent into the shadows, another reminder that fear is often closer than we want to believe. Subscribe now to The Price Paid, because in the end, we all pay for ignoring the warnings. The only question is, how high will the price be for you?